let's talk about the state of the world in 2025. Because right now, the world is on edge. The number of active conflicts has shot up to a level we haven't seen since the end of World War II. In this explainer, we're going to break down the key battlegrounds and what they tell us about this new, unsettling era we're living in. And we're going to start with one single powerful number. 59. That's the number. According to the Institute for Economics and Peace, that's how many active state-based conflicts are happening right now. It's a huge figure, and honestly, it's heading in the wrong direction.
And this really puts it into perspective. Just let that sink in for a second. We are living in a moment with more widespread war than at any other time in the last 80 years. This isn't just another tough year, it is a historic peak for global instability.
So, what does a world on fire actually look like on the ground? Well, in this first section, let's dive into the unprecedented tensions that are pushing nations around the globe to prepare for the worst.
And if you want to know why, just follow the money. $2.5 trillion. That is the record-smashing amount the world spent on military forces this year. And that signals something absolutely crucial. This isn't just about reacting to fights that are already happening. This is a global rearming. It's preparation for conflicts yet to come.
Okay, so let's kick off our world tour right here in the Americas, where the battlegrounds are shifting and new threats are popping up. Frankly, a lot closer to home for the United States than many people realize. And what we're seeing are two really different but equally critical situations playing out. On one side, in Venezuela, you've got direct U.S. military action. And then right next door, in Mexico, there's this escalating internal war between incredibly powerful cartels.
So first up, Venezuela. We're seeing some pretty direct U.S. military involvement here. The CIA has reportedly conducted its first ever ground strikes using Hellfire missiles, and we're hearing that Navy SEALs are marking targets along the coast. The goal seems pretty clear: destabilize a government that's gotten way too close to Russia and China for Washington's comfort.
Now let's pivot to Mexico, because the situation there is now being called an internal cartel civil war. You see, after key leaders were captured, the big cartels just shattered. What's left are these fragmented groups fighting viciously against each other and against the state for control of territory and smuggling routes.
Okay, and here's where it gets really complicated. On paper, the Mexican government is pointing to a 28% drop in homicides and 37,000 arrests. But at the exact same time, a series of high-profile assassinations have triggered these massive historic protests against the violence. It shows this deep frustration on the streets that just doesn't line up with the official numbers.
So here is the bottom line. Mexico has now officially overtaken China as the #1 trading partner for the United States. And that changes everything. It means the cartel instability isn't just a crime problem anymore, it's now a direct threat to the entire North American supply chain, which reframes this as a major strategic issue.
All right, let's jump across the globe to the Middle East. The collapse of the Assad regime in Syria has created one of the most unexpected, frankly bizarre partnerships in modern geopolitics. It is a true story of strange bedfellows.
I mean, to really get this, you have to look at the unbelievable journey of Syria's new leader, Ahmed al-Sharaa. In the early 2000s, he was an al-Qaeda insurgent fighting U.S. forces in Iraq. He was even captured and thrown in prison by them. Later, the U.S. put a $10 million bounty on his head. But then, in 2024, his forces took down the Russian-backed dictator, Assad. And all of a sudden, these two old enemies saw a mutual opportunity.
You know, this saying pretty much captures the surreal new reality perfectly. The same man who once fought American troops is now meeting with the U.S. president and, get this, conducting joint counterterrorism raids with American special forces against ISIS. It's a pragmatic, if totally wild alliance, born out of shared interests.
Okay, now let's turn to Asia. The whole region has become a high-tech powder keg. It's essentially a live-fire testing ground where the absolute latest Western and Chinese military technologies are clashing for the very first time.
Just look at the 2025 air battle between India and Pakistan. It was the biggest dogfight since World War II. In one corner, you had India's advanced French-made Rafale fighters, and in the other, Pakistan's smaller air force flying Chinese J-10Cs, but equipped with a game-changing new weapon, the Extreme Long-Range PL-15 missile.
So how did they pull it off? This breaks down the absolutely brilliant and deadly tactic they used. Pakistan knew it couldn't win a straight-up dogfight, so they set an ambush. Their ground radars guided their jets just close enough to fire those PL-15 missiles from over 200 kilometers away. By the time the Indian pilot systems even detected the incoming missiles, it was just too late.
Pakistan reportedly shot down multiple Indian jets. And this quote from India's own Chief of Defense Staff confirms it. They took losses, and more importantly, they learned a really hard lesson. That one battle completely rattled global assumptions about modern air combat and proved just how effective Chinese missile tech has become.
And look, this isn't just an isolated incident. We're seeing similar things across Asia. In the Cambodia-Thailand border war, you've got an old, lingering conflict now being fought with brand new tools, like those cheap but deadly FPV drones. And over in Myanmar's civil war, China's endless demand for rare earth metals is basically fueling its support for the military junta, just prolonging the violence.
So we've looked at all these different hotspots. What does it all add up to? Well, in our final section, we're going to pull it all together and talk about the new rules of war and a fundamental transformation that's happening in global power. And let's start with a really sobering fact. Not only are there more wars starting, but they are becoming harder and harder to stop. The ways we used to make peace just aren't working as well, and these conflicts are just dragging on and on and on.
But, and this is a really important but, it's not all doom and gloom. There have been some bright spots. Azerbaijan and Armenia actually signed a formal peace deal. South America was the only region in the entire world to get more peaceful. And countries like Saudi Arabia and Indonesia also saw major reductions in conflict.
So the crucial point here is that the very nature of war itself is evolving. As you can see, modern conflicts are increasingly defined by a few key trends. One big slice there is for proxy wars, fueled by outside powers, like what Russia and the UAE are doing in Sudan. Another is these long-range duels, like the missile exchanges between Israel and Iran. And that final piece, that's for these brutal wars of attrition, often mixed with new tech, just like we've seen in Ukraine.
And this brings us to the central idea of our whole analysis. These aren't just a bunch of random, separate fights. They're all symptoms of a much larger global shift. We are in a major transformation period, where the old rules that govern the world are fading away, and it seems like global power is up for grabs once again.
And so that leaves us with one final, critical question. The order that was built after World War II, for all its flaws, it provided a certain kind of stability for decades. Now that it seems to be fraying, in a world where power is seen as something to be fought for and won, what comes next?